right. Good evening. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for June 20th, 2024. And at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall. And I don't believe we got anybody on Zoom. Let me see here. If you're joining on Zoom this evening, we can see that you're here. You may observe the meeting. However, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will respond as quickly as possible. With that, we'll begin with roll call. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian Garrett,
Here.
Maria Lorcher,
Here.
Patrick Grace,
Here.
Jared Smith,
Here.
Andrew Seal.
Here. So the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. We have Bladen subdivision, file number H 2023-0043, be open for the sole purpose of continuing to a regularly scheduled meeting. So if there's anybody here to testify on that application, we will not be taking public testimony for it this evening. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a consent agenda, and we have two items on the consent agenda. The first is to approve the minutes of the June 6, 2024 meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission. We also have the findings of fact, conclusions of law for Maddie's Wine and Whiskey, file number H 2024-0008 by Steve Bainbridge, located at 835 East Fairview Avenue. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. Looks like we've got. There. At this time, I'd like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. We will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant is finished, we will open the floor for public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony portion. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up in advance to testify. We will need you to state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to address the commission. You have previously sent pictures or a presentation for the meeting will be displayed on the screen, and you will run the presentation with the assistance of the clerk if needed. You have established that you're speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf. You will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who wish to speak or wish to testify. When you have finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom. You will no longer have the ability to speak. So please remember, we generally do not call people back up. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to the city council as needed. So at this time, I would like to continue the public hearing for item H 2023-0043 for Bladen subdivision for continuance to July 18th. And as indicated, this is the 5th continuance requested by the applicant. So if we can put in a renoticing fee so that the adjacent property owners are made aware again of the noticing. Somebody wants to take a stab at that.
Mr. Chair,
Go right ahead.
I move that item H 2023-0043 is continued to the July 18th hearing, and that a renoticing fee is imposed according to city code, whatever staff's discretion is.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue file number H 2023-0043 for Bladen subdivision to the date of July 18th with the imposed fee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right. That file is continued. Now I'd like to open public hearing for item number H 2024-0011 for Black Rock Coffee, and we will begin with staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Second item on your agenda this evening is the Black Rock Coffee conditional use permit. The site consists of 0.54 acres of land currently zoned CC in the city and located at 776 North Cliff Creek Lane. This particular lot is a lot and block in the Mile Hines Pine subdivision that was approved in 2020. Was integrated with the rest of the multifamily that is currently developed out there. So staff has found that this site is consistent with the mixed-use community standards. I'd also mention to you as well that the concept plan that was tied to the original the recorded development agreement for this project did include a drive-through on this particular property. So now the applicant is here before you this evening, just executing or making sure that they are in compliance with that recorded development agreement. As I mentioned to you, this proposed drive-through is within 300 feet of an existing residential use, which is why they're here to discuss the proposal with you this evening. On the submitted site plan here, the applicant is proposing to construct a 1,460 square foot coffee shop, which is defined as a restaurant in the UDC with the associated drive-through. Access to this property is from a private street that was approved with the residential subdivision, which is along the west boundary here. So you can see there is an access that comes into the site. The site plan also meets the UDC standards for parking. As you recall, a restaurant requires one stall for every 250 gross square feet of gross floor area for the structure. This site has 9 stalls in accordance with UD standards. Access into the drive-through, it happens along the southern boundary. You can see there is an escape lane that runs along the eastern boundary. The drive-through window is adjacent to North 10 Mile Road here. So cars have the ability to get around and move out as they enter the drive-through, and they can also turn and head north before they even enter the drive-through lane itself. So there's really kind of 2 functions happening here as far as the drive-through is concerned. If they decide not to go into it, they can get out sooner rather than entering it and having to go around the building. One of the other items that we look for as part of our specific use standards for drive-throughs is pedestrian connectivity. Because the site was approved with that Mile High Pines development, city staff did require some open space here along the west boundary that was constructed as part of that development, along with some interconnected pathways from the multifamily to the commercial portion of the site. And if you look at the southern portion of this site plan, you can see there is a walkway that runs east-west into and through the lot, and then also connects through the drive-through with the front of the proposed coffee shop here. And then also to the south, the city has already approved a medical office on the other southern lot. And so we're trying to get not only pedestrian connectivity east to west to the commercial, but also north-south. So that's happening as well. To your right, you'll see the landscape plan. The landscape buffers along Pine Avenue and North 10 Mile Road were installed with the subdivision improvements, and those need to remain intact and protected during construction on the city. The applicant did provide some sample building elevations. If you drive down North 10 Mile, you probably see a lot of the multifamily that's already constructed out there. This design is proposed to match similar building materials as were approved with the multifamily structures. I just let the commission know that the applicant still needs to go through that design review process with the city. So we'll ensure compliance with the architectural standards manual and the requirements in the recorded development agreement. I've had a chance to look at the public record. No one has provided any public testimony on this application. Again, staff is recommending approval as the site does meet the goals of the comprehensive plan and meet UDC standards. With that, I'll conclude my presentation and stand for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you much. Would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening. We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Sasha Rubenstein. I'm here with CSHQA on behalf of Black Rock Coffee tonight. We will be complying with all of the conditions for approval.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the application or any questions that you might have?
No, the design is in review and we will be complying with all of the comments received from the city.
Okay. Commissioners, we have any questions, comments? Mr. Grace, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a comment in the staff report about indoor seating, and I was curious how much you were gonna have for indoor seating or patio seating, I guess, as well,
We're currently still planning out seating requirements, but I think we are looking between 16 and 20 seats for outdoors.
on the patio. Okay. Just to follow up, as someone who used to like to frequent coffee shops, it seems like they've all gone away. And I was curious, from your perspective, is that just the market? People just want to be able to drive through, and people, less and less people are going and sitting in coffee shops and spending time there?
I think plenty of people are still spending time in
Okay.
coffee shops. I think the drive-through just assists with ease of access and
Yeah.
is more convenient. But I think we provide a patio, and lots of people have been using Black Rock spaces to our knowledge, so we think it'll be successful.
There's one by my house over on Chinden, so good. Glad to hear that.
Commissioners, anything else? Might make this quick. Do we have anybody signed up to testify?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No one has signed up.
Anybody else in the audience wants to testify on this? No? If there's anybody online, hit the raise your hand button. See anybody raising their hand, so if there's nothing else to add, then thank you very much. Appreciate the project, and we will do our deliberation.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2024-0011.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2024-0011. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, public hearing closed. This one seems pretty straightforward to me, so I've been to a few Black Rock coffees and I kind of agree with what Commissioner Grace is saying. It's nice that they have an open area for more seating and things like that, kind of more of a community type of feel to it. And especially on this corner, I think it's going to get, honestly, I think it'll get quite a bit of foot traffic plus, the drive-through traffic that they have there. So welcome addition. I was remarking earlier that I drive by that frequently, so I often wonder on some spaces of land, what will go there? So now I get an answer this evening. So if there's any other comments, questions,
Mr. Chairman, a motion?
go right ahead.
After considering all staff applicant and public testimony, I move to approve file number H-2024-0011 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of June 20th, 2024, with no modifications.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve file number H 2024-0011 for Black Rock Coffee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. File passes. Thank you very much. All right, and with that, I'd like to open file number H 2024-0012 for Luna Hospice, and we will begin the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Next item, as you mentioned, is Luna Hospice. It's a request for annexation and conditional use permit. The subject property consists of 1.03 acres of land currently zoned R1 in Ada County, and the physical address is located at 525 East Overland Road. Comprehensive plan designation for this property is medium density residential, but this evening we are talking about a non-residential use on the site for a residential care facility. In the comprehensive plan, there is some language policy in there that gives the city council discretion when a site has access to an arterial and it's located is less than 2 acres in size. An applicant can request an office designation Although they're not asking for office zoning, the use itself is similar to an office. So staff has used that verbiage in the comprehensive plan to say that because this is a non-residential use and quasi-commercial or office, that rule does, that policy does apply. And so they're here, although we're not talking about density, we're talking about an office use or a non-residential use on the site. So ultimately, the council will be the one to decide whether this is appropriate or not, and they'll let the applicant move forward with that R8 zoning. But just wanted to give you some of that context that just because we see a residential land use designation doesn't mean something else can't go on there at the discretion of city council. So the applicant is here tonight to discuss annexation and a conditional use permit to develop a hospice care facility, 14-bed facility to be exact. Currently on the site, there is an existing county residence and a garage structure that will be used for storage. So the home is approximately 2,200 square feet. And then this dark gray box that you see in the middle of the site is a 2,200 square foot addition that they plan to construct on the site if and when annexed into the city. And then also they're proposing to provide the required number of parking stalls required for that use as well. So under the code, a nursing care or residential care facility only has to provide half a stall per bed. So in this particular case, 14 beds times 0.5, we're looking at a minimum of 7 stalls, and that's what you see on the site plan or this concept plan this evening. Also wanted to mention to you, and we called out in the staff report, the existing garage, which is located here along the west boundary, really kind of the southwest corner of the site. It may be encroaching into the R8 setbacks. Whenever we annex properties in and existing structures stay on the site, we try to have the applicants or those structures comply with R8 standards. So one of our recommended conditions of approval is that they demonstrate on the site plan what those official setbacks are. Staff did receive an email from the applicant indicating that it could be a 4-foot setback on that west boundary. And since they are requesting an R8 zone, the minimum setback required is 5. So there is a possibility of a 1-foot encroachment. Again, because this is annexation and staff is recommending a development agreement, you can make a recommendation to the city council for it to remain as is as a non-conforming structure. Or you could say remove any structures on the site that don't meet the R8 dimensional standards. Access to this site is probably the more critical issue for this evening, and that is because there is no other access to this property except for Overland Road. I think the one thing that staff was supportive of this use is it's usually less traffic than what you see with other commercial uses. However, this site does have 3 existing curb cuts, as noted in our staff report and the ACHD staff report. So you can see here on the site plan, there's a U-shaped driveway that is currently constructed on the site. And then also along the east boundary, there's a curb return here as well. Because this curb return on the east boundary aligns with the one on the north side of Overland Road, staff is of the opinion that access should be utilized from that driveway and these 2 existing be closed. This would allow for cross access to be achieved and granted to the property to the east. And this would also allow the applicant to keep the existing asphalt and potentially stub to the west for future connectivity to the other county parcel along the west boundary. Now, I would bring to the commission's attention that the existing home on the west boundary recently went through a pretty large residential addition through the county. Staff has been in conversations with them about annexing into the site, and they said annexing their property in. They said that they had no plans of annexing anytime soon. So there is the likelihood of that remaining residential for quite some time is a real possibility. Although our code still requires that we grant cross access to either one of these properties. Again, if that's something that the commission wants to recommend to council, that's certainly within your purview, and council can take that under consideration when they act on the annexation request and the conditional use permit as well. Staff is also recommending a 20-foot wide landscape buffer around the south and east boundary. That's something that the applicant did offer up as part of their site plan. I would let you know that that is not required by city code. That's something that the applicant wants to do, and staff feels that is appropriate. Where the existing driveway and the existing garage is on the west boundary, staff is okay with that encroaching within the 20-foot buffer. And obviously the other encroachment as well on the west boundary, meaning the setbacks. Staff is not recommending a 20-foot buffer along the west boundary. Also mentioned to you, because the arterial Overland Road is an arterial street, the UDC does require a 25-foot wide landscape buffer along an arterial roadway. The applicant is providing that on the plan or demonstrating compliance with that, except in the areas where the existing U-shaped driveway is. When that driveway is removed, they are required to provide the 25 feet in the area where the driveway is being removed. If they can't meet compliance, they can certainly go through alternative compliance with staff at the time that they go through CZC approval with us, or they can simply take advantage of our water-wise landscaping standards, and that actually allows the applicant to reduce that buffer width by half if you take advantage of those standards. So not only could they get a narrower buffer where the existing driveways are, but they could also reduce that entire 25-foot buffer by half by employing those water design concepts in our city code. I think the applicant probably wants the flexibility to meet with staff, or work with staff on that as they go through the remainder process with us. But just wanted to put that on the record for the applicant that they do have flexibility under the city code. So here's the example of the building elevation, the addition that I had mentioned to you. Certainly, it's a single building materials. Definitely want the addition to look like the existing residents on the site, so it's a cohesive design. Just let you know, they still need to probably refine this design concept a little bit more, work with staff going through that design review process, but I think we can get them there. So although here is a sample elevation, staff anticipates a little bit more design elements on the structure to comply with the existing residents on the site. I also had a chance to look at the public record on this particular application before I came this evening, and again, no public testimony on this application as well. Again, with the request for council to approve the non-residential use on the site, and with the conditions in the staff report, staff finds this does meet the requirements of the comp plan and the code, and we are recommending approval, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. My name's Claire Smarta. I'm with Civil Sphere Engineering. Address is 4466 North Waterfront Way, Boise, Idaho. Thanks for hearing me out. We're really excited about this project. We feel like this is going to be a great use for the location, being on Overland and kind of a more busy street. But we had good feedback from the neighbors in the 2 meetings that we had with them about being a quieter use, but still complying with everything. But they seem to be happy with it as far as we understand. As Bill was saying with some of his comments, we are working to get all of those addressed. The ACHD comments came back and talking about the cross access and the one driveway approach. We're definitely going to work with city to make that work and try to get the best scenario in there. Even though the east and west properties will not be annexing at this time, we're going to do our best to make sure that in the future when they do, it's going to all flow and work well and they'll be able to get in and out. The other issue was the garage, the existing garage. That we've got that 4 feet and not the 5 feet. We would like to keep the garage if possible and have some alternative compliance, but willing to work with staff as we move forward. I think most other issues that came up in the staff report we're very happy to comply with. I do have Alyssa Blakely here with the hospice facility to speak about some of the fencing and other requirements that they're a bit concerned about, so she can explain how this hospice facility is a little bit different than maybe a long-term residential care and assisted living facility. So
Okay.
if she wants to come up later or now, whenever you feel.
Now is perfect. Alyssa will need your name and address for the record as well.
My name is Alyssa Blakely. I live at 4514 West Clearview Drive, Boise, Idaho, 3703. And I'm the administrator at Luna that is located in Nampa. And we're a 10-bed home. We're licensed as an assisted living facility, but we only take people that are on hospice. So we specialize in that end-of-life care. I'd say 98% of our residents are bedbound or wheelchair bound. No one is ambulatory or can get around on their own. And so we are the only option for that in the Treasure Valley right now. And that's why we're looking to open up a second location and to bring it to Meridian. That's actually the biggest problem I have in Nampa is people say it's oh so far away. And I'm from Seattle, so that doesn't click in my head. But so having this location in Meridian will get the people in the Ada County area what they're looking for their loved ones, for that close one-on-one care that we offer. In most large facilities, you're looking at a caregiver to resident ratio 1:20, and we offer 1:5. And so they're getting a much more personalized care. And in order to be licensed through the Ralph Organization for Residential Assisted Living Facilities, there's a special license for taking anyone that is, they say the word eloper, someone that's trying to escape or to leave, that they're unaware they're doing, but they're always trying to leave. And we will not be getting that specific license. We specialize in that end of life care, and no one's really getting around, so we don't need that license. We're not a locked unit in that verbiage for what they use for that. And so when it comes to that 6-foot fence for the front of the property, we don't have a need for it out in Nampa, and we'll be getting the same license that we have for the one in Nampa as for the one in Meridian, and taking those same level of care residents. Questions for me?
Commissioners, we have any questions? I do have a couple, actually, between staff and you guys can probably answer. So the garage, is the garage a garage or more of a carport? I mean, is it enclosed?
It's an enclosed garage. It's detached. It's a detached garage.
Okay. And then on the existing house, will it be a residence where like it will all be a care facility?
It
Okay.
will all be a care facility,
Okay.
but it will still look like a home.
Okay. And then the 7 parking spots, parking's always a problem. So, and,
In all honesty, it will be sufficient
okay,
because no one that's there has a car
right,
because they're not going anywhere.
right.
Staff will park over in front of the garage because that part is paved.
Oh, okay.
That's there during the day, and then the spots will be open.
Okay. So really there is more than just the 7.
Yeah,
out
there's
there
just,
for
so
that,
there'll be 7 designated parking spots for visitors, and then we'll have where our staff will park. That's already there.
Yeah, my concern was
Driveway.
more around just emergency vehicle access, because obviously there's going to be some of that happening there as well. So I just want to make sure.
Actually, that's very, very rare.
Okay.
Because they're on hospice, everyone has a DNR signed.
Okay.
And so the only people really coming are the coroner.
Okay.
Anything else?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you made me think of something. Do you, so with the garage, I'm guessing access to that is from the north side? So the side,
Please, Harold.
I can, do you
So-
have the site plan on your
Mhm.
screen? So on the west side is where the garage is, and so you can see there's some concrete and asphalt just north of it, overland. Before we were coming in with that U-shaped driveway, and they could just drive directly in from over it. But we will be closing both of those off because of the staff report and ACHD's comments, and so yes, access to that garage will come from the north, but it will be with a 20-foot drive aisle coming from the east. Does that make sense?
okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the access wasn't maybe on the side that adjacent to the residential homes to the south, that the access is on the other side of the building.
It'll be along Overland, so we're not gonna be putting in a big driveway next to somebody's house or
Yeah.
anything like that.
And then just follow up, do you plan on having any, like, garbage pickup or dumpsters, anything like that?
Dumpsters, regular trash.
Just the containers, like residential?
Mhm.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Commissioners, anything else?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I think this is more of a me issue than anything. So if the drive aisle is coming from the east, we have this garage over on the west side. Could you walk me through really quickly, just kind of the path? If I'm an employee and I'm parking there, do I go through where this parking lot is and kind of up this curve and around the house and then down north?
So there will be, I will have to redraw the site plan. There will be some additional demolition outside of the existing house that'll have to happen to get a larger drive aisle through there. But yes, we'll be coming in from the east side, coming down and heading west. And yes, we'll wrap around, but I'll ensure that there are decent turn radiuses for cars to get in there and everything like that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That makes more sense.
Anybody else? No? All right. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No one has signed up.
Okay, is there anybody else in the audience that wants to testify? We have everybody up here. Everybody's had their chance tonight. With that, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Commissioner. With that, if there's no further questions or comments, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2024-0012.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2024-0012. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed. Would anybody like to jump in and comment on this?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
seems to be a good use for this space, and it sounds like the client is going to be amiable to make any changes to make the site work regard to annexation and accessibility. You know, the 4-foot setback versus the 5-foot setback is a pretty small amount. And I understand the city wants compliance, but with that structure really being there, I would be in favor of alternative compliance, but I'm not the decision maker, so all I can do is give my opinion. And it seems like moving the cars from the east side of the property to the west and having that parking should be sufficient for the kind of care that they're going to offer at this facility.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Commissioner Lorcher. I don't feel super strongly about, alternative compliance. I think that, to my mind, again, not decision makers here, but I don't see that being an issue to me personally. I also just want to thank you for what you're doing. I've degenerative diseases run kind of pretty strong in my family, and so having seen kind of my family take care of my grandparents and great grandparents over the years, it's really important work you guys do, and I'm thankful for you guys for that.
Okay. Anybody else? Good.
Mr. Chair,
Go
I'd just
ahead.
like to comment. I too second that. Having family go through this several times, I very much appreciate the services you're providing.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council for file number H 2024-0012 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of June 20th, 2024 with no modification.
Second.
Right. It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval of file number H 2024-0012 for Luna Hospice. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh. Commissioner Grace, go ahead.
Oh.
Absolutely. Is down.
Sorry, I had a question before we vote. Maybe it's for staff. Do we have to make any recommendation on the setback, Bill, or?
Chair, members of the commission, I would appreciate something on that if you wouldn't mind, Commission, just for the fact that currently we don't have anything addressed in the DA that speaks to a non-conforming structure on the site. And that's why I brought it up. I just wanted to be clear that I heard you were supportive of it. So again, as we transition from you to city council, I want it to be clear that if you guys want a DA provision, that council approve that to remain a non-conforming structure, that we add that verbiage in the DA so that they are aware that you made that recommendation to them. And then staff can add that and share that information with them as we present to city council.
Let me do that again.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council for file number H 2024-0012 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of June 20th, 2024, with the recommendation that the non-conforming structure remain as is.
Second stands.
Been moved and seconded to recommend approval of file number H 2024-0012 with the aforementioned modification. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. And with that, we have one more. I'd like to open public hearing for item number ZOA 2024-0001. And we will begin with the staff report. Bill, again.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Last item, at least on my docket tonight, is the 2024 UDC text amendment. If this body is very familiar with, every year I come before you with a round of code changes. This is the one that I've been working on for quite some time. It doesn't have to be as formal as the last two applications, so if you guys have questions about any of the proposed language or changes, it can be an open discussion if you guys feel like you want something either further explained or kind of the staff's rationale for coming forward with that recommendation. I won't hit on all the proposed changes this evening. Certainly there's 8 pages here. But in the staff report that I prepared for you, I did highlight some of the more notable ones. A couple of those we're actually adding some uses to our code that we don't currently have. As you can see here on slide 1, we're adding food truck courts, and we're also adding a definition for food trucks. And then in chapter 2, we're adding those as allowed uses in certain zoning districts. And then as we transition farther into my report this evening, or my presentation, we'll also have specific use standards that coincide with those new uses that I'm proposing before you this evening. I also wanted to let the commission know over the last several years since COVID has happened, we've seen a large increase in the number of drive-throughs that have popped up in our communities. And so we understand that sometimes getting in front of the body can slow down the process. Not that we're in the business of slowing down the process, but we're in the business of improving the process. And so I do have some draft language for drive-through establishments that I want to share with you this evening as well, and let you know again the rationale why we're wanting to change that. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of go through my presentation tonight, or these slides here, pages of the changes. I'll highlight kind of the more notable ones, and then if there's any ones that you see that spark your interest or you want further discussion on, I'm happy to do that as well. Really on this particular slide, wanted to at least bring a couple attention to a couple of the definitions on this slide. One is the definition of a bedroom. And the reason why this got added is because in our code, we have different parking standards for 1 and 2 bedroom homes versus 3, 4, 5, and 6 bedroom homes. And what we're starting to see is people are coming forward with what they're calling a 2-bedroom home, but in fact, it's a 2-bedroom with an office/flex space, and it has a closet and all the things that look like a bedroom, but they're wanting to take advantage of the parking requirement for a 2-bedroom home, which is a 1-car garage and 1 parking pad. So you only have to provide 2 parking spaces, although in a 3-bedroom home requires 2 garage spaces and a 20 by 20 parking pad. So it's half the parking required. Certainly, this body is very familiar with the affordable housing issue that we're dealing with. It's a national topic, really. It's not a City of Meridian issue. But that was one of the purposes of why we did change our parking standards a couple years ago to address this. But now we're kind of almost blurring the line or seeing this being taken advantage. So in the building code, there is actual definition for a bedroom. And so that's really what we're trying to achieve here, is aligning our zoning ordinance with the building code, so that when we have floor plans that come into the city for us to review, we can say, you have X, Y, and Z, you're a bedroom, not a flex space or an office. And then we have more ways to enforce that moving forward, or at least more tools to say, we call it a bedroom, you need to change your plan. The other definition, as I mentioned to you, is the food truck court and a food truck. So food trucks, that's nothing new to the City of Meridian. Currently, they go through the city clerk's office under a temporary use permit, and there's regulatory standards for them to comply with. Well, what we're trying to do here in the UDC is create a three-tiered approach here. So basically, if you want to be a food truck and be mobile and go throughout the city parking on a site and then leave at the end of the day, you can do that through a TUP. You don't need it to get planning and zoning's approval. What we're trying to achieve with these two definitions is allowing these uses on a permanent nature. Certainly, I think everyone's aware, you go to Portland or larger cities, they have these food truck courts where they have multiple food, even downtown Boise, they have it, where there's multiple food trucks, sitting areas, restroom facilities, and it kind of creates its own little synergy. And we don't have anything in city code that allows that currently, except for the TUP process. I've met with several different purveyors of food trucks over the last couple of years, and they've asked us to look into this, and that's why we did it. Like, if we can understand it, look at what other municipalities doing, and then tailor those specific use standards to our needs, there may be a way to do that. And I finally got around to it and got it added to the list of code changes for you this evening. So that's how we defined it. And a lot of these definitions do marry up with the TUP process as well, so that it's a consistent code, not only in the zoning ordinance, but also our temporary use standards. Next, I think that's probably enough on that topic. I'll get into more of the specifics as I get further into my presentation. Next two items, at least on this slide here, we're actually taking out, going back to that affordable housing issue. In certain residential districts in our code, we have minimum home sizes still. So this is one way how we felt we could affect that change in the community, is not having those obstacles or hurdles. So again, there's probably more to follow with ADUs. We probably need to further develop those standards a little bit more than what we have. But this is kind of the first step in the process of eliminating obstacles to affordable housing. And we felt by doing that, we could remove the minimum square footage areas. Also mentioned to the commission that Caleb, who's the deputy director, actually had a separate subcommittee on housing. And this is one of the recommendations that came from that subcommittee. And he has others that, again, we'll bring forward to you on a subsequent code change. There are other changes that I'm proposing as far as adding the food truck and food truck courts to the schedule of use in Chapter 2 of our code. Originally, when we vetted this idea or thought about incorporating food truck courts and food trucks into the UDC as permanent uses, we thought maybe we'd just make it ancillary or accessory uses to maybe a restaurant, a bar, a brewery. But as we started talking about these changes with the UDC focus group, we realized that this could be pretty much anywhere in a commercial or industrial zone. Why are we capping ourselves or thinking so minuscule and having them just for specific uses? Why not just say you could have it anywhere in a commercial zone or an industrial zone or even in a traditional neighborhood zone? So that was really one of the recommendations that came from that group. It's like, why don't we open it up to all zones and see where it falls? And again, code is citywide, but code can also be changed. So if something doesn't work as we try this, certainly we can come back and propose changes to this body and to the city council moving forward. But you can see here that I have stated that they would, a food truck court would be principally permitted in all of our commercial zones. Food truck would be accessory, and then same thing for the IL and industrial zones, I should say. And then I carried that theme over into our traditional neighborhood districts. But you can certainly tell they don't belong in our residential districts, so nothing was proposed in any of our residential zones. That was left to the temporary use code to address versus the zoning ordinance. Here's an interesting change that I wanted to bring to the commission as well, is the size of a carport. It's out of the hundreds of units, or probably should say thousands of units we've approved over the last couple of years, we realized that industry standard for carports is actually 9 by 18 feet. And our code said 10 by 20. So all of those multifamily developments out there probably have carports that were built to 9 by 18 standards. So we felt we better get that cleared up in code. So I went ahead and met with the UDC focus group, met with the industry leaders on carport designs, and they did confirm anything other than a 9 by 18 is a custom carport, and it changes the engineering and the drawings and increases the cost of the carport. So really, when we look at the intent of the code is to have covered parking for multifamily. So even with a 9 by 17 or 9 by 18 carport, we're still getting a majority of the parking stalls covered and the car being covered. So it still meets the intent. And that's why we went ahead and proposed this change, so that we could bring some of our older multifamily projects into compliance with the code. The other item on this particular graphic is changes to our regulations along state highways. So in our code, whenever we have residential developments, it's not necessarily just residential developments, it's noise sensitive uses like hospitals, schools, libraries, residential uses. Any of those uses adjacent to a federal highway or a state highway require sound attenuation. So basically a 10-foot berm, a 4-foot berm, 6-foot wall combination, there's standards in the code. Well, we were approached by one of our prominent developers, and they are looking to develop along the new State Highway 16. And some of those overpasses are elevated, and where the residential uses abut the overpass, you can't attenuate the sound. It's not possible because the overpass is taller than the residential subdivision. And so they wanted us to study, the UDC focus group, to study that issue. And I can tell you, I've read multiple noise studies from the Federal Highway Administration. And it's a very complex issue to try to tackle in code. But what we do have in code is alternative compliance. And the other factor that we wanted to take under consideration is, and bring to your attention, is not only do we need to be conscientious of the noise, but we need to be conscientious of the air quality around those types of developments, because there's a bunch of particulates that get put up in the air as well as you're driving down the road, or cars may have to idle or be parked there at the intersections for quite some time with congestion. And that does have an impact on health. And that's what our job is, to preserve and protect the public's interests and mitigate against public's health. So this is our staff's way of not only daylighting that issue, but also taking it one step further and addressing air quality. So again, this is one component of that. So we are adding that component to the purpose statement to make it clear that it's not only mitigating air quality, but also the noise impacts. So that's one new item. And then to go along with that, as I mentioned, is how do we combat that? How do we make that fit in code? And I can tell you, noise is difficult, because noise bounces off things. Noise, when you want to have any opening, noise travels underneath it, around it, through it. So there's no one size fits all. But in our code, we always have what we call alternative compliance, and that is equal to or better than way of getting to do that. So I made a commitment again to the UDC focus group to try to come up with something. I'm not saying this is the best option, but certainly it is an option. And again, I can't write a code to capture every scenario out there. But again, after all of my research, there's ways to do that. You can have greater separation. You can require more landscaping. Um, you could do that through taller walls, terrace berms. You can even design the building a certain way, have triple pane windows or thicker walls, better HVAC systems to filtrate the air in the home. There's ways to do that. And that's why I thought it was important to add that and make it clear that you can do that and you should do that. If you can't meet that under the, just meeting the standards of the code. The one thing that I mentioned to you in my staff report is, in order to do that, I also wanted figures to accompany the proposed changes, because I think it's easy to say there's ways to do it, but to me, photos or figures kind of speak to the standards better. So after this application was transmitted, I actually went to Brian McClure, who's on our long range planning team, and I said, hey, can you put together some figures that I can share with the commission so they can see what we're talking about here? So I'm going to actually stop sharing the changes here and then show you some of the graphics that I would like you to incorporate in your deliberations this evening, so that I can carry those forward to city council, since they came after the print date or transmittal date of the staff report. Let me see if I can pull these up for you real quick. So these were the graphics of ways you could use alternative compliance to meet or exceed the city code requirement. So you can see here, in this particular exhibit, it shows you where maybe the property grade is exactly at the same grade as the highway, and how you can do that. You can still see there's a 35-foot buffer, the highway right away. And then you can see where you have denser landscaping or additional deciduous trees to absorb some of that, the emissions from the vehicles and particulates as they go down the roadway. And certainly landscape buffers and trees do provide adequate noise mitigation as well. So that's one example. Again, here's another example with no pathway. And just the berm, and you can see where you don't do a berm, but you do a 14-foot tall wall like you see along the interstate. Here's an example where the roadway is higher, and how you would achieve that with a 35-foot buffer and still meet the purpose statement of the development standards. Here's one with a wider buffer at 45 feet. And here's one where you could actually put a backage road right up against the road, and then even have greater separation. So again, this is meant as a tool to, not telling everyone thou shalt do it. It's just, these are some alternatives. If you have to go through the alternative compliance process, these are ways you could do it to help just kind of spark ideas for applicants. And then I also had Brian prepare some perspectives for you. So you can kind of see a 2D rendering here. So These won't be in code, by the way. Just something to see it rather than a one-dimensional side view of a drawing.
And really the focus on this is more where we're developing next to highways, things like that, not necessarily anything we're gonna see. Would we see something like this on a like Overland Road or Eagle Road, or, I mean, Eagle Road is a highway, but it, I mean, you see where we're on that distinction from.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think yes, I think you can see that, but a lot of those areas are already built out. A lot of times what we hear from the development community with our standard is yes, we want the wall, we want the berm, we want the noise, suppress the noise, but then our code says connect the sidewalk to the roadway. Well, as soon as you open the wall and the berm, guess what? You just created a channel for the noise to go through, so you haven't really created anything. Or you have to have access to that berm. So how do you do that? How do you get the landscapers around that? And I've always been a proponent, then put the fence along the right of way and put the landscaping on the interior edge of it. And that way the people in the subdivision get to enjoy the berm and the landscaping. So that's kind of what I tried to achieve here with this too. It's like, there's ways to do it. Just because the code says do it this way, doesn't mean you can't propose something different or maybe even something better. And so that's what I was trying to explain to the UDC focus group is I can't, just because the highway is elevated, doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything. I don't want to write a code that says you don't have to do anything. That doesn't seem fair. That's not fair to the people that will live there.
And would the
For long-
developer or the community be responsible for all the landscaping and managing it?
Commissioner Lutcher, no, it'd be a common lot, HOA lot, just like any other subdivision that would be owned and maintained. So really, that's, again, these are meant to kind of get creative solutions and think about that as you're laying out your subdivision. If you were to ask my opinion, I think they should always do they should do a backage road and another buffer, and you'd have double buffers on that road and you wouldn't have anybody backing up to the highway. Most places do that. They have a frontage road and they don't allow that backyard to be right up against that type of facility for this very reason. You want that step back. But our code isn't that way, but I think they should do it that way, in my opinion. But where our code kind of lets us down a little bit is it says that the backage road or frontage road, it speaks to requiring one, but it says offset at 600 feet from the right of way. And I think the 600-foot mark is one, probably meets ACHD's policies for separation, but two, it allows enough land for you to probably develop between the highway and that backage road. Again, maybe that's something we can look at some future date, but maybe there's nothing that says you have to do, though the code says to do that, but there's ways to even do a frontage road this way and still meet that requirement. A lot to think about, but again, it really needs to be a combination of landscaping and wall or berm to really successfully mitigate air pollution and noise pollution.
Yeah, the two I can think of off the top of my head is where Touchmark is off of Highway 84, where they have significant berm, but I think there's also a frontage road there as well to be able to service the waterfall and the landscaping. And then Spurwing over on Chinden. That had a couple iterations because I think one was called Farm or something like that, and then Spurwing took it over where they had that wall of all those tall grasses. And there's not really a frontage road. I think they're kind of waiting for the road to get wider and who's going to pay for that. But there's a significant berm between that and the community to be able to do that. But if you're talking about Highway 16, at least where I'm at Ustick and McDermott, just north of us towards McMillan, they're building now. And some of the developers are putting in walls and some of them are not. So, and in the long term, if they're going to be different developers, it's going to look inconsistent.
Yeah, I can share, members of the commission, I can certainly share with you. I know all of the developments south of McMillan we required, I believe, 6-foot berm and 6-foot wall. So it was consistent all the way down to U-stick. And then from that point, you're right, there's north of McMillan. We don't know what that's going to be yet
Right.
until it comes in. And I can tell you an application is going to come soon. It's not in process right now, but we are pre-apping and in discussions with the developer on that site. And that's why we're moving this code amendment forward to help with that, address that concern when it's in front of this body and the city council.
We do know the long-term plan for Highway 16 between Chinden and the freeway. It's going to be 100% up. Might not be in our lifetime, but that's the long-term goal. So
Yep.
even though there's a bridge over McMillan, but there's not one at U-Stick, and there's going to be a bridge on Cherry and over the railroad tracks, but some places there's not. So it's going to be, you know, like this for now, but eventually it'll all be out.
So commissioners, here's where I left the kind of the blank spot for those graphics. So once I hopefully get a positive recommendation for me to insert those this evening, as I transition to city council, those will be inserted in this table for council to take under consideration.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
One question that's just, it's top of mind because of some of the discussion Transportation Commission's been having around right away for future expansion, that the long-term plan. I don't remember the specific name. But I guess just thinking about kind of the geometries of, you know, if say a development is not currently, you know, they don't currently have that highway that's above a certain level, but say we use right away to expand the highway down the line, does the city ensure the compliance, or does the body that's using that right away to extend a lane, for example, do we then ensure compliance that otherwise would have fallen on the developer, or are those people, just because it's the order of operations, do they not get that same protection of that abatement?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think Chinden Boulevard is a prime example of what happened there. We preserved the right of way. Some people got beautiful landscaping and everything, and some got a wall right behind their backyard. So to answer your question, the Transportation Authority is going to dictate that because they're going to have to follow federal regulations as well. So we have to kind of defer to their standards. We can, certainly if they come to us and ask for input, we're always going to say, put it back the way it was. Because that's how we work with ACHD. Typically when they come in and widen arterial road and there's landscaping in place, we're like, please put the landscaping back in, don't do rock. We want it put back the way we've approved it, and they'll do that in most cases if we can get in front of that and ask them to do that. But if we don't, then you're right, we're left at the mercy of whatever is going to be required by the transportation, the minimum required. And that's what I said when I was researching this particular topic. That's what I was researching. What does the highway administration require in these types of situations? And a lot of times it's that wall that you see along the interstate, and that's why you see the mix. But there's also a technical study they have to do to determine what the mitigation is. So it's very complex, a little bit more than what we need to get involved at the city's process. But yeah, the government requires a study to show how it's going to be mitigated and why, the purpose of it. So again, when you have the federal government, you have a lot of regulations you have to try to meet. They're always going to trump us.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So here's the slide with the expanding upon the drive-through establishments. So again, this was vetted through the UDC focus group. They were happy to see this because a lot of probably what you're seeing along 10 Mile, if I had to guess, probably a majority of our drive-throughs are either Eagle Road or 10 Mile in U-Stick, or 10 Mile in Chinden area the last couple years. So again, the code isn't eliminating a CUP for a drive-through. There's always going to be parameters they have to hit. So it's essentially, if they're still within 300 feet of a residential use or district, they're going to need that CUP. But what we went on to say is if Again, if somebody comes forward and they're part of a mixed-use development, or they have a master site plan and they show a couple drive-throughs on the site and it looks like it's a pretty well thought out concept plan, that's where we can say, you know what, your concept plan included a drive-through. You're doing what's consistent with that plan. We're not going to make you go through conditional use permit. We're going to approve it based on the merits of that concept plan and that either that development agreement or whatever requirements we have in place for that development moving forward. That was one way to do it. Everyone liked that. Again, if it's separated by any street, I'm not sure why we picked the arterial street. So basically we said any street, and then Old Town, again, it's going to be required in our downtown area. This is how it works because of how small the lots can be, and we want it more walkable in our downtown. So we want to make sure whatever they do, it functions well. The other component about it, it's this, and I can assure the commission, this change does not going to combat all of the in and outs of the world. I can't, again, it's almost like noise mitigation. I can't write a code to offset the stacking for a Chick-fil-A or an In-N-Out. It's impossible. Well, what we did do is we did put in some minimum standards for the width of the stacking lanes and the escape lane. And then we also put in a minimum amount of vehicles you have to account for each requirement. And we did differentiate the difference between a restaurant and a bank. So, and you can see that here are all other drive-throughs. So here on number 6 here, it says for basically restaurants, food or coffee shops, you can have 2 stacking lanes, but you're gonna have to provide, each one's gonna have to stack a minimum of 5 and still provide that escape lane. And like I said, for banks or something, it could be 2, because not a lot of people go to banks or use their drive-through facilities. Like it doesn't operate the same, or even a drive-up pharmacy is not the same as a fast food restaurant or a coffee shop. So again, this is some of the ways to try to work on that, mitigate that. So again, if a developer came in and they met all this criteria, it's going to be staff level. They're going to have to demonstrate how this works. I almost thought about, I mean, certain drive-throughs, ACHD requires what's called a queuing analysis. If they have concerns that cars may stack up on the road because they're too close to an intersection. But I really didn't want to add somebody else's requirement into our city code. So I was figuring out how can I do that, but not impose somebody else's, an outside agency's requirement in our code. But anyways, I stopped at that and left it stay with these standards. But any comments or concerns with these proposed changes?
Commissioner Grace?
Mr. Chair, Bill, maybe I'm being way overly technical, but with regard to that page 7 there, number 1, is residential modifying the word use? So is it a residential district, residential use, or dwelling? Okay.
That is correct.
I guess I just wouldn't want anyone to think it reads the other way, residential district or any kind of use. But again, I could be overanalyzing it.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Bill, I have the worst memory. The dimensional standards for minimum living space, do those currently exist for anything above R4? Or is it just R2 and R4 that currently have them?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it's only in our R2 and R4 district.
Thank you.
As I'm thinking about that, I mean, there was a million things that kind of went through my head on that. As far as how does something like that affect kind of outbuilding or out structures? Or I'm thinking kind of the tiny home, mother-in-law quarters, rent something as an Airbnb type of scenarios. And is that something that could be impacted by that, or is that just whole separate section.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the ADU standards are all contingent on the structure that is the primary structure. So
Okay.
anyone that comes in for an ADU permit, the maximum you can have is 900 square feet.
Okay.
Yes. So if again, the code reads you get up to 50% of the primary structure or 900 square feet, whichever's more restrictive. So if you had a big 5,000 square foot home, obviously 50%, 900 is going to be the more restrictive. So you're not going to be able to build anything more than a 900 square foot unit. But like I said, we're still toying with that. It's on my list of talking with legal on July 1 about how we can tweak those ADU standards to see, not necessarily increase the size of them, but just explain, do they need to really provide additional parking on the site? How do we kind of minimize those impacts? Make it a little easier for applicants to get those established. I don't know if we'll go as far as saying allowing other types of ADUs like modular homes or tiny homes, which is an RV in our world. But I don't think we'll go that far yet, but who knows? It's up for debate or discussion anyways.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, that just, my mind starts kind of thinking in that, multi-generational housing and things like that as things come forward about it, like where, and I've got to think there's going to be a lot more of that heading our way in the future.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it's always been, it's interesting because we really don't have a lot of R2 developments in the community. But whenever we do, typically the homes encompass the entire lot anyway. So someone puts a big home, no one's going to go in there. The homes are usually 4,000 or 5,000 square feet at a minimum on some of those lots. So I haven't seen it in the case where someone's built just a 1,500 square foot home on an R2 lot, or even a 1,400 square foot home on R4. But certainly some of our older subdivisions throughout Meridian, they do have, there's even requirements on the face of the plat that says the home sizes are X amount square footage. Very, very odd. But yeah, that standard's been in place for quite some time.
Okay. I did see you had passed by, but there was one that kind of touched on the definition of a mobile home, or I saw that one go by and I did not breeze through that when I was reading it at home. So
Yeah, Mr. Chair, member of the commission, this is one that we have to get aligned with state code. So currently, we have to treat manufactured homes that, say, for example, there's a residential lot in Old Town, and someone wants to put a manufactured home on it. We have to treat them, per the state law, we have to treat those the same as a single family dwelling. But also in that state code, it says, but they have to meet the other parking requirements and the setbacks established by the city. So this is one saying it's not a manufactured home park. That's a different use in the code. But when it's a standalone manufactured home on a residential lot, it has to be treated like a single family. And so that's why we had to correct that error. It's a conflict with state code. So that's what we're doing here, is work with legal on the language here. And so we're trying to get that in alignment with state code so we're not out of compliance.
okay. I'm bouncing all over the place, and I know on the food court, you'd mentioned that the food court that is down in Boise, I mean, what is kind of the vision of that? Is it someplace they're going to go for the day or for the evening and then exit? Or is it something that can be more semi-permanent?
And that's the next slide for you, is the specific use standard. So
Oh.
haven't gotten there yet, but we're there now. So
Okay.
good time to have that discussion. So the one in Boise is different. It's not set up. It's a hybrid model. So basically they rent the land from the city of Boise. They pay a proportionate share of their earnings to Boise. They have a contract with them. And then there's a morning shift. So trucks come in for the morning, then they leave, and then another set of food trucks come in the afternoon for the evening crowd. So it just depends if you want breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and we're not getting that specific on this particular case. from my research on the topic and what I think is best for the city of Meridian is I'm looking at cities like Portland. You see what they do. A lot of the people that I've met with have shown me concepts where they would have a shared building that had restrooms, potentially a tap inside, almost a drinking establishment where you can get your food out there, but you could go in there and just meet with your neighbors and talk and treat it just like a bar atmosphere. They have picnic areas with stage structure. They have cornhole or outdoor games where you can, it's like just a little commercial development where everyone congregates. And that's what I try to do with these specific use standards. So again, if you're going to develop the site and it's going to be permanent, we're going to require them to put in permanent things. And so that's why you can see here, I specify hours of operation. And I want to mention to the commission that a lot of these standards come from other sections of our code. You know, we go and look and say, how does this work and how can we tailor that to fit our needs? And that's what I've tried to do here. So basically here, the hours of operation, that's in our code. We limit that. Again, we want food trucks to have a clean appearance. We don't want rundown food trucks that aren't taken care of because it's a safety hazard. They have to be inspected by the health authority and the fire department. So we got to make sure that they meet the minimum standards for them. So that's why you see that here. They have to have their own utilities to serve that. So they have access to water, power, whatever else they need to operate their food truck. I've gone as far as saying I want to see permanent restrooms. I don't want a bunch of porta pots out in the middle of this food court.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be permanent, build permanent structures on the site and pave your spot where you park your food truck. Then we also require parking. So I also said 2 parking spaces shall be provided for each food truck so that when people come, they're not parking all over the commercial development or taking people's parking. It needs to be a standalone business. And then same thing as sheds or anything like that. Again, I don't want any permanent portable structures on the site. If you're going to do it, we want you to have a designated building that addresses trash, restrooms, and even gathering space. Anyways, that's kind of the idea behind it. Again, we'll put in the landscaping, just like the code, the frontage improvements, all of those things that come with development.
Mr. Chair,
Go right ahead.
thinking of 2 off the top of my head, they're in downtown Phoenix. They created a food truck court with shipping containers. And so they made a U shape where you walk in and then each shipping container was its own entity as like a food court type thing, but it was a permanent and it did have bathrooms. And in the middle, there were like recessed seating, you know, like fire pits where you can gather. I think there was a cornhole or shuffleboard or that type of thing, but I didn't see any parking. And because it was downtown Phoenix, there wasn't really room to create a lot of any kind. So I think it was just ended up being street parking. Then the other one I was thinking of, just recently during the Mountain West Championships, we were in Las Vegas and they also had this, I wish I remember the name of it, but they also had kind of a zigzag, weird kind of flow of these little food truck type things. But it was also on the strip and there was definitely no room for parking. So, but they did have permanent bathrooms and each one was their own like little stall that had, sometimes there was a bar with, there were chairs, or others, there were just public seating all around, and it kind of created this S curve that you went through. I'm just wondering, depending on where this goes, is the restriction of having designated 2 parking stalls for each truck or port is going to limit the opportunity for a space to have this type of concept. You know, I mean, I think in both of these cases, they were infill projects. You know, they kind of found this empty lot and thought, oh, let's put this here. And both have been extremely successful. And both of them were very a lot of people would just walk to them because it was in a central location in a urban area, which is a little different than our community since we're a little bit more spread out. But I guess the only thing that kind of thought through my mind is that if you do choose to have something like this and it ends up being an infill, I'm wondering if the 2 parking spaces per food truck and say there's 10 or 12 of them, is that going to inhibit that concept to actually come to fruition because of the space it might end up being? I don't know if that's really a question. It's just basically.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I do appreciate that feedback because you're right. But at the same token, if it is a food truck or a trailer, then they have vehicles too, and they have to park that somewhere. So like you said, there's never going to be a perfect scenario. I think the intent was to have some type of parking, but certainly there's always alternative compliance to parking standards. And then in our downtown area, they would have the ability to go in front of the Meridian Development Corporation, which is our urban renewal district, and ask for their recommendation on parking. So there's other ways to get there. If you think that is important, I think we could certainly modify that to say, unless approved through alternative compliance or something like that, to give them an out if that's something that the commission would entertain moving forward to city council.
You have the word shall as, you know, and
Yep, and
so it doesn't.
change too, yep. Shall
That-
means you must do it, so yep, it's a pretty,
I like the idea of alternative compliance on that because as I've looked at and thought of different developments or ideas like this that come through the city where we have kind of the, work, live places, modern craftsmen, the areas that have that capability. If we had something like this in that area, then not only do you have kind of that small business or entrepreneurial element to it with businesses, you also have the food trucks that are in there and kind of more of a community feel and involvement in it, Saturday market kind of feel to it, where that's not it's a semi-permanent fixture in that it's easily accessible, involves more than just food, where you have, several small businesses that are involved in it, where an alternative compliance to that, because there's already parking provided for some businesses there that are obviously going to benefit from that. So in my mind, that's kind of where I see as a food court kind of would pop up around here. I love the idea of having it in Old Town, to be perfectly honest. I think it would do amazing things to help revitalize some of the Old Town downtown area. But in some of the newer developments, if this is an option, even as something that they can do for an amenity, to kind of spur something like that on to, kind of going out here on a limb. But I think about stuff like this a lot where I've seen it be very successful, as especially in smaller communities as they put things like this together, more haphazardly. But it comes with a high amount of success to it because they kind of do involve small business entrepreneurs, food trucks, kind of more of a festival or Saturday market type of feel to the whole thing. But having it being more, permanent, semi-permanent in a community would be helpful, I think. I like the idea of that, so.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I fully echo your thoughts. One of the other things I was thinking about is transit orientation. If something is, especially as over the next decades, as we kind of look for additional transit opportunities, I'm thinking about there might be opportunities to have alternative compliance or things like that based on proximity to, maybe outside of downtown. I don't know if near 10 Mile, if there are opportunities or near really high density housing, amenities. I think that's a different conversation. But I think that's an interesting concept. But I think even just proximity to a lot of foot traffic, I don't know, however, to quantify that, but I think that's an area where encouraging more of this kind of concept would be great. I think my wife mentioned the other day, we visited family back in California, and she came back and she said, I really like that Idaho places such a such a priority on supporting local businesses and supporting Idaho businesses. And I think that's something that absolutely with small businesses, entrepreneurship, we should encourage and have more of that. I know the term 15-minute city is a political taboo word, but I think the more that we can have services or community opportunities just in the paths of people's daily lives, not just going downtown, but near their homes or on the way from home to work, or vice versa. I think that should be encouraged. So I think the parking conversation and also, maybe some additional conversations around what is allowable for some of these other things, maybe not in this current iteration, but definitely conversation to go forward, I think is worthy of that.
Go right ahead.
So you got me thinking, Mr. Chairman, about the parking. So if you're a single food truck, you don't have a requirement for 2 parking spaces, but if you're in a court, you do. And if a court is defined as 2 or more food trucks. And that was intentional, right? You guys thought about that.
It was intentional for the fact that if you look at the food truck standards, it should be an established business with parking already. Or if anyone wants to put a food truck on their site, then they would have to come in and give us a site plan and show us where they're going to park that. We could evaluate that and analyze that, whether or not they're losing parking or not. So that's why I think certainly with the food truck court, there's a couple different ways we can fix the code. One, shared parking is one option. We do allow that in the code, so that's through alternative compliance for shared parking. Or 2, you can say not required in Old Town. If you want it more in an urban setting, then that's what we try to do, is minimize the impact in Old Town because of the fact that we want people walking and not have a sea of asphalt. I could see if this project to the east of us ever gets up and running again, I could see the frontage of that having a bunch of food courts right there, right along Main.
Yeah.
And they have structured parking and we have City Hall parking right across the street. That could work. So, and we have on-street parking. I think of what I hear here, I really like the discussion that we're having because, again, I'm just thinking, yeah, parking stalls seems reasonable, but you bring good points. Those are valid points. What do we do? Again, the code is the minimums, but what do we do in those situations where it can't work? We want to be flexible, but we don't want to go too flexible. We still want to make it clear that this is a permanent use and it comes with an investment in the community. Not the other difficulty here that we're trying to protect too is the fact that a lot of people invest heavily in their brick and mortar stores for restaurants. And we want to be sensitive to that as we look at rolling out these codes because they put millions of dollars into their storefront or their commercial kitchens and their businesses and their parking lots and their landscaping and all of their employees. And they're paying taxes, and then you have a food truck come in here and they just have to do minimum, nothing. And they can just go on a dirt lot and serve food out of a trailer. So again, there's an economy of scales there, but that's why I'm trying to make it feel more permanent and not make it feel like you could just pull up on and have a gravel lot and not do anything and just have a bunch of food trucks on it. It really is, if you're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's get some kind of investment in the community and make sure that we're not hurting surrounding businesses. We want it. I'm with you. I think it could bring some real synergy to the community if we do it right and get the right standards in place.
Yeah, and there's also businesses that are brick and mortar that also have food trucks and highly sought after food trucks because
They do both.
yeah, they can do both and hope, might be provide some of the leadership on this where, I don't know that they're necessarily going to want to be in something like that, but depending on where we put things, it's an opportunity for businesses to think about expansion where they do have brick and mortar, they do have a food truck, and they're going to try we're gonna try this location in Meridian and see what the, see what the draw is on that, and maybe we can look at expanding out in that area as well, so. But I do like the point you make about we want to be careful we're not parking it next door to, I'll just pick on In-N-Out. Let's not put anything else next to that would draw a crowd. But yeah, so yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we tried to do something along these lines, along kind of the you know, where we have a lot of restaurants already along Eagle Road or something like that, it probably wouldn't be well received. So I don't know if we're going to speak to some kind of etiquette on that or if that's just more of a common sense move, but that is a very good point.
I think this is a good time to probably segue into the next one, just food trucks. And that way again, to your point, we're not requiring parking for a single food truck. We're just requiring a designated space on the site to accommodate for that food truck. So again, that's going to require, it's going to be treated just like a permanent use. But the food truck would be approved as an accessory use to the primary business. And therefore it'd have to operate at the same, with the same hours of operation. Again, make sure that the food truck integrates with the brick and mortar store on the site, so it doesn't look like it's two different functions. It needs to integrate as one, almost to like the Maddie's recently that you saw, where they had the food truck all built in, the trailer all built in, and that they're using that as their commercial kitchen. And then again, all the necessary inspections that come with that. The difference here is that we don't really require the outdoor seating, but we do require the primary business owner to grant patrons to use the restroom, or even the food truck vendor access to their public restrooms. Again, we don't want the portable restrooms out in the parking lot. We don't want anyone parking in the landscape buffers. And then again, if they do designate a spot for the food truck, we want to make sure that the primary business still meets the minimum code requirements for parking. So again, this is our way to fact check that and prove that up. When we come in with their site plan, we can verify that they're meeting all of those requirements and not impacting the surrounding developments by having people park all over in spots they shouldn't be. But that's kind of the difference between the two. You get one. So again, TUPs, and you want to move every day, or sit on a site for 2 hours and leave every night all day long through the clerk's office. That's not a use through the zoning code. You want to be parked there permanently, you're going to require some improvements on the site and us to review and look at that. So again, it's almost think of it like what we did a few years ago with home occupations versus live work versus vertically integrated buildings, right? There's a tiered approach. Yep, you can live in your home, run your business, or you can buy a building, a space, have your business below you, walk up and down stairs, but it's a smaller footprint. Or you can come downtown, build a big building, and the whole entire first floor is all commercial, and it's all residential or commercial above you. It's really, this is the approach. You start with one scale, you go to the next scale. And if you want a full-on food truck court, you're doing all of that. So it really is that tiered approach, just like we did with home ox versus live work and vertically integrated. So we're going to regulate that.
Would there be an appetite on the kind of the permanent food truck to make it semi-permanent, meaning that, I mean, I'm thinking of somebody that has a truck that's, a food truck, or I'm thinking more of something like a trailer where they have the ability to pull it out, take it somewhere, do their business out of it and bring it back, because it is, I mean, conceptually that is their kitchen that they can take and do other things with. Would there be the capability to do that for a business? I mean, and I'm thinking of the businesses that have a food truck as part of their business, where for really busy times at their brick and mortar, that just augments what they're capable of doing, where, other times when they need to pull it out, they need to go to the fair or, other big events and stuff like that. Would that be something that they could apply for or have the ability to do?
So, Mr. Chair, yes, this, as long as they have a designated spot, no one says they have to leave that there all the time. They can still move people in and out there. We're just making sure that it matches, no one's parking in the parking lot and the parking meets. As soon as we give them that approval, planning isn't going to go out there and regulate every vendor that goes in and out of that site. A prime example is, I think you've seen a couple of them recently. You saw Loose Screw Brewery.
Mhm.
They're going to have a food truck or try to have a food truck in front of their business. They have a pad site right in front of it. They have a patio connected to it, just almost like Maddie's, and they'll be able to serve people at that brewery. That's how that's a way for him to augment his business and have other vendors come in and out. There's already a designated spot, so that no one says they have to bolt it to the ground, take the tires off, put it on jacks, skirt it like a have permanent utilities to it. No, it's just green things, integrate it best you can, make it blend in, make it complementary to the existing business. Because again, if you put money into the business, into your building, we want you to have a nice food truck as well. We want that same person renting space from you to take pride in operating on the same property that you're offering them. So that's one. And then also the drinking establishment, the dog park, you approved off of 10 Mile there. They had that little cove area or the outdoor doggy area. They had a little spot there where you could pull up a food truck or a trailer. So that's really almost the intent of what we're trying to do here with these specific use standards.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So one question about the hours of operation, is that tied to the food truck or the location on premises?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that is tied to the primary business. So if someone closes at 10, the food truck's closing at 10.
So, Mr. Chair, one thought, for example, that could be worth investigating. Necker is a coffee shop in Boise, primarily earlier hours. But during Tree Fort, for example, they're out, and it's not a food truck, but they have a cart that is serving coffee and cocoa, et cetera, until 10 or 11 p.m. And so that, I guess, is a question of, does it make sense that if I say I'm a coffee shop, but I have a small food truck or something like that, and I go to an event that is a day-long event and I'm serving coffee there, would I have to extend the hours of operation at my primary business in order to be able to operate my food truck off-site, or would I have to close down early just because of my normal hour? There's a rub there that I think is maybe not what code is going for, or maybe that is the intention.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that would be the TUP. That's the example where someone could get a special use permit, special event permit, and be able to operate as part of that event permit through the TUP process. It has nothing to do with this scenario here.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Moving right along.
I won't touch on the last item. Kurt and I worked that out with one of the developers, so that's just a play on words, but it is just typically in our code, we require people to provide proof of posting, but in doing so, they have to get it notarized, legally notarized, and provide that documentation. There's nothing in state code that requires it. We just add that in our ordinance. So as long as they can provide the documentation that they've extended it and still provide the photos and placement where they put that on, and they certify that they've done it correctly, it still meets the intent of the code, requirements of the code. So it's just a cleanup item. Again, like the last applications, no one has provided any public testimony on this UDC text amendment as well. And I'd ask the commission to, again, include those graphics as part that I shared with you, those figures, so I can include those as we transition to city council and offer up any other language you have regarding the parking standards pertaining to truck courts. With that, I'll go ahead and conclude my presentation. See what you guys want to do. I don't think we need to deliberate. You deliberated. We talked about it, so let me know how you want to proceed.
Question for Kurt. I will ask for public testimony.
I was just gonna make that comment. So this is a public hearing, so you should follow the normal protocol for that. And then once you're complete, you can close that hearing and deliberate further.
Okay. Would anybody in the audience like to come up and testify? Yeah, I mean, you hung out for this, so I figured there was some, maybe you were going to do something, but. Okay. All right, commissioners, we have any questions, comments, statements for staff?
Mr. Chairman, I have just one question on page 1 at the bottom. It mentions that with regard to mobile home or manufactured homes, it says that it must comply with this title. Is the building code in Title 11?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, no, that's referring to requirements for setbacks and parking.
Got it. Okay. We have nobody wanting to come up and provide testimony. So with that, if we're ready. I will take a motion to close the public testimony portion of file ZOA 2024-0001.
So moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number ZOA 2024-0001. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed. Yeah, and with that, I don't know how much we want to put into a motion. With this really good conversation, for certain. So it's been, all these ideas, make my head swim with more ideas. So, makes me want to build something in Meridian, Just need to find that right investor. No. But, no, I, like I said, I think very good, discussion. Does anybody have any more to add? They want to discuss on this? If not, somebody can take a stab at a motion. Bill, what you wanted to add in there was you wanted to include the graphics from or for. We can be more explicit about it, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think you can just say, include the figures shared at the hearing tonight.
What's that?
Just say share the figures that were shared at the hearing, because they're part of the public, they're still
Okay.
part of the public record. I made sure to get those to the clerk when I sent out the staff report.
Just to include the graphics shared in the presentation. Okay. Anybody? Any takers? Motion?
Go.
Mr. Chair, I see
Don't let me,
what you're writing. So
don't let me get in your way.
go for it.
Okay. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council file number ZOA 2024-001 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of June 20th, 2024, with one modification to include the graphics during the planning and zoning presentation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to recommend approval of file number ZOA 2024-0001 with the aforementioned modification. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right. Good job, everyone. I will take one more motion.
Mr. Chair,
Go right ahead.
move to adjourn.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. We are adjourned.